Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good day, good evening. My name is Adam Feinberg, and you're joining us for Harlem Stories. And today I'm joined here with my co-host, Mark Becker.
Hey, Adam, and just to remind you, you're right about all those things. It is afternoon, evening, and morning somewhere in the world, and hopefully everyone is listening.
Yeah. So today we've got a lot on topic today. 5 things to do exploring Central Harlem for an afternoon. Well, there's so much to do, but just to give you our listeners an idea of some things to do. Let's start off with some of the most obvious here is New York City. It's a foodie town, So of course, I don't necessarily like to put a lot of restaurants into these episodes, primarily because you never know who's going to be around by the time somebody is listening. But we do have some oldies and favorites that are just been going on in Harlem for so many years. Hopefully they will continue going on for so many years. And, so a few examples might be...
And just to let folks know, we're not being compensated by any of these restaurants. So this is an unbiased opinion.
Yeah, and we're just going by, these are the classics, that I think people that tend to know the neighborhood or, have even heard about it, globally. Some of these
Right.
names have been. Sylvia's, world class, and I think they even have their sauces that are bottled for supermarkets.
One of the few soul food / Southern cooking restaurants in the city.
And on that note, we'll also talk about Amy Ruth's, same cuisine.
No slouch.
Melba's, also very well known. I think every time I turn on the news, for something uptown restaurant related, Melba has got great public relations. So, she's always on the air over there. Lily's, which they are known as for their bakery and for their rugelach. More of a newcomer to Harlem. I think they've now been here probably around 8-10 years, but not a newcomer to the city. Levain Bakery.
Oh, with the big $4 cookies that are now probably $6.
Yeah, but they're massive. They are massive.
It's a meal.
Yeah, so, obviously that's, among the, some things to do in Upper Manhattan. Plenty of restaurants up here, lots of great restaurants, but these are, some of the classics. Everyone knows them, and, some people even make it a destination to come uptown specifically for these restaurants. So, you're done eating. Where are you going to go? Or maybe before you go eat, where are you going to go? So, among my other suggestions for number 2 for 5 things to do exploring Upper Manhattan, Astor Row. And we have talked about the Astors in prior episodes. This is the same family that built the Waldorf Astoria, and we talked about in prior episodes the courtyard apartments, such as the one on 116 and Adam Clayton. There's the Apthorpe on 79th, and then there's the one on 86 that starts with a B. I can't remember the name of it. Right off Broadway. Do you remember?
It's escaping me at the moment, but I know what you're talking about.
But okay. And actually, it's the one where Only Murderers in the Buildings is actually filming.
Oh wow.
The Astor Row is part of the same Astor family. It's a total of 28 row houses on the south side of West 130th Street between 5th and Lenox. So they're really interesting. The houses were designed by Charles Buck between 1880 and 1883 on land that John Jacob Astor had purchased in 1884. I think I get that reversed over there. Actually, he designed them in the earlier times, but he actually purchased the land in 84. Astor's grandson, William Backhouse Astor Jr., was the driving force for these developed, houses to be developed. The houses are 3-story brick single-family houses, or at least they were originally designed that way. I know a couple have been transformed into SROs, but they were single-family houses. They're set back from the street with front and side yards and wooden porches. That's something you never see in Manhattan, or hardly ever see in Manhattan. They were landmarked in August of 1981, and after years of difficult economic circumstances, once they were landmarked, money was raised to restore the facades and repair and upgrade internal systems. Almost all the houses have since been restored, though in 2021, 28 West 130th Street was demolished after following years of degradation. But
that's unfortunate that no one came in to save it.
Yeah, I mean, even though it was landmarked, just ultimately, the cost of, maintaining and updating a landmark house can be very, very expensive.
Sure.
Which is why you'll sometimes get owners in proposed landmark districts that they'll, be pushing back because of the expense of, trying to do everything the way it was originally constructed in, perhaps, 100, 150 years ago. So that makes it certainly difficult. But, to help offset some of that, the Astor Foundation, they actually provide grants to help maintain those original porches. So, numerous homes have been, have been able to upgrade and, properly maintain those porches. So, you might think if you're coming from outside the city, a porch, that's nice, but, that's nothing like special. But this is Manhattan, the land of the high rises. So, that is something special and different here.
Whenever I hear the word porch, I think of someone in the southern United States just sitting in a rocking chair on a wooden deck, looking out onto the sunset. So porches can be very tranquil.
Yeah, and back when these houses were originally constructed, certainly this was the country. So it's not far removed from what you're suggesting there. With thinking about the South and that countryside, and well, that's exactly what the landscape was back at that point.
Sure.
So yeah, that's certainly an interesting sight to see. Just these houses with front porches. Who was actually interested in buying one? It wasn't available while he was searching, but rumor is that it was Neil Patrick Harris wanted to buy
Wow.
one of the houses on Astor Road.
Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser, or
How I Met Your
Mother. Yeah.
Both great shows.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with Doogie, so obviously, I think
like
I was
a 12-year-old doctor or something.
and I think I was somewhere around 12 when that was released. And I'm now giving
doctor.
I'm giving away my age now, but yeah, and ultimately we all know actually now, in fact, that Neil Patrick Harris actually bought just a couple blocks south of the Astor and just on Fifth Avenue.
I remember you mentioning that. Where's his place?
Well, he sold about a year ago, but it was on Fifth Avenue, I think around 126th Street.
Right by that big pool.
Yeah. There is.
I've been swimming there a couple times.
Gotcha. So yeah, there is a big, large public pool just a few blocks to the south there. So yeah, that gives you a secondary point in things to do when exploring Upper Manhattan. Or Central Harlem specifically. Let's go to number 3, Strivers Row. So we have all these historic districts in Upper Manhattan. There's some really beautiful looking homes. Strivers Row is located on both sides of West 138th Street and West 139th Street between Adam Clayton Powell and Frederick Douglass Boulevard. And for those that don't know Harlem, Adam Clayton is the equivalent of 7th Avenue, and Frederick Douglass Boulevard is the equivalent of 8th Avenue.
In fact, I remember listening to a radio host recently who grew up in Harlem, and he said, wait, 7th is what, Frederick Douglass?
7th is Adam Clayton.
Adam Clayton. He said, they call it Adam Clayton now, but I grew up there, so it's still 7th Avenue to me.
Yeah,
So it's hard to kind of like for me, they call the Triborough Bridge the RFK Bridge, but I've always known it as the Triborough.
The Triborough and the Mario Cuomo Bridge, which I always know as the Tappan Zee.
Right.
But or even relating back to New York subway system, they say the one train, and I keep in my head I'm saying the 1 and the 9.
Well, my uncle always calls the F train the IRT.
The IRT and the IND.
Never heard that one.
Yeah, there were the 2 lines. There was the IRT, and then there was I forget the second one, but yeah, that was the generation before mine. So these on Strivers Row over there, it is a national and New York City historic district. So it hits both points there. These row houses, they were built in 1891 to 1893. It was actually 3 sets of buildings. David H. King Jr., he was the developer, and he actually built the 1889 New York Times building, not the New York Times building that we know today that's all glass, that apparently people like to play Spider-Man and climb around Times Square. But, but he also...
Does that really happen? Wow.
Yeah, well, yeah, a couple people have gotten arrested for that.
Well, it's so inviting. Well, there's that guy in France,
I think it was the guy in France that got arrested for...
He climbs up the side of buildings.
Yeah, and I think it was that one of those, that guy from France, I think that was one of them that got arrested. But I think there was at least 1 or 2 other people.
And I freak out when my son jumps on the bed. This guy's climbing up the side of buildings.
Yeah, scary stuff. But apparently he doesn't think so. But yeah, this is the guy that built the 1889 New York Times building, and the MSG building, the original MSG building, not the one that we know today.
We're not talking about monosodium glutamate.
Right, Madison Square Garden.
We just need to clarify that.
Right. Madison Square Garden, that's actually built as a circle. So...
it's not square.
Yeah. So it was designed by Stanford White, and Stanford White is one of those pre-war architects, that everyone goes crazy for. So the red brick and brownstone buildings on the south side of West 138th, the addresses on those are 2350 to 2354 Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard. Those were designed by James Brown Lord in the Georgian Revival style. The yellow brick and white limestone with terracotta trim buildings on the north side of 138th and on the south side of 139th, 2360 to 2378 Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Those were designed by Bryce Price and Clarence S. Luce in the Colonial Revival style. The dark brick, brownstone, and terracotta buildings on the north side of 139th and 2380 Adam Clayton Powell were designed in the Italian Renaissance Revival style by Stanford White of the firm McKim, Mead, and White. And White is really the superstar in there. These were landmarked by New York City in 1967 and put on the National Register of Historic Places in 1975. These townhouses were originally called the King. It was the King Model Houses and they were intended for like upper middle class white people, featuring modern amenities and dark woodwork with views of City College. The houses sit back to back, sharing a rear courtyard and alley. So, this is when, during that period where, it was transitioning, the neighborhoods were transitioning to different ethnic and race groups. So, back then it was only marketed to Caucasian people only. But, some of the entrance gates that were originally put up, this is a period before cars, they still have signs that said, walk your horses. And those still exist. So that's kind of like a cool thing to see in Manhattan. They have alleys that were originally for the stabling of horses and delivering of supplies without disrupting activities of the main houses. Today, these are primarily used, instead of stables, they're used as your own private parking garage. It could typically fit like 1, maybe 2 cars, depending on, the size of the lot. Many have built decking above the garage to create that private outdoor space because unlike the typical townhouse in Manhattan, these didn't have backyards. Instead, they had the former stable space and the alleyway. Very few homes had sold as the economy kind of tanked, and at the same time, the neighborhoods were changing. Almost all wound up getting foreclosed on. They sat empty for years until they were finally made available to African Americans. Generally, they attracted both leaders of the Black community and upwardly mobile professionals, or strivers, which is how the name Strivers Row came about. Yeah. And just something worth mentioning over here. Notable past and present residents include Alvin Bragg. Now, I wouldn't say this if it wasn't public information and he hasn't commented in the press himself about it. Don't want to put him in any danger. Bill Bojangles Robinson and a great musician, Bob Dylan, lived in these homes.
Really?
Yeah.
I think, doesn't he have an album called Strivers Row or something?
I don't know. But if he does, it would make sense because obviously he was living there. In pop culture, Cab Calloway mentions Strivers Row in his songs Hard Times, Topsy Turvy, and The Ghost of Smokey Joe. The Row is mentioned in the song Harlem Blues on the soundtrack to Spike Lee's Mo Better Blues, and Jungle Fever has a scene filmed on Strivers Row. And I think the last two kind of pulp culture references I've got for this are the Strivers Row is the name for the Penguin Random House publishing imprint created to elevate the African American writer, which I didn't know that before. And speaking of writers, Colson Whitehead, he's written a couple novels that reference Strivers Row. So best-selling writer there. So that is, I guess, stop number 3 on our tour of Central Harlem uptown, given a day just walking and, going around the neighborhood. Number 4 is iconic, and we've talked about it a little deeper in past episodes, the Apollo Theater. Of course, if you're going up to, Central Harlem, it just makes sense to go to the Apollo Theater. The music hall is on West 125th Street, and it's, of course, the noted venue for African-American performers and home to the TV show focusing on new talent, Showtime at the Apollo. Seating has actually is pretty large, is 1,506 seats and 2,500 people standing. It was originally constructed in 1913 as their Hertig and Siemens Music Hall and altered shortly after opening for showing movies. In 1924, it was leased as a theater for burlesque shows, so it wasn't as wholesome as it is today. And in 1934, it became a venue for black performers and opened to black patrons for the first time. So again, the changing culture of Upper Manhattan. Today it's on the New York City Landmark Registry and National Register for Historic Places, and approximately 1.3 million people visit the Apollo annually. So, that is a significant destination, of course. On February 14, 1934, the first major star to appear at the Apollo was jazz singer and Broadway star Adelaide Hall in Clarence Robinson's product, Chocolate Soldiers with Sam Wooding's orchestra. The show was limited engagement and highly praised by the press, establishing the Apollo's reputation. The Apollo went through some difficult times and a lot of changes over here, and despite that, and it was very successful in the 1960s, but in the 1970s, drugs and crime caused it to close, and it wound up ultimately closing in 1976. Every Wednesday from the 1950s to 2000, notwithstanding that period where the venue was shuttered, the Apollo featured Amateur Night in Harlem. And, this was kind of
a unique... Adam? You ever get on stage?
I haven't, but I have a friend that did get on stage.
Really?
Yeah, and she sang, and she definitely was not booed. So, but I think that goes back to actually my next point over here. There was a man with a broom that would sweep performers off the stage if the high vocal or opinionated audience began to call for their removal. In the traditional New York style, audiences would let you know their thoughts without hesitation. When have you known a New Yorker that can't keep their mouth shut?
That's right.
So that's pretty common. Sometimes a siren or a cap gun would also serve as a substitute for the broom.
That's when you know your goose is cooked.
Yeah. I have to wonder why sometimes the siren or cap gun rather than the broom or vice versa. I wonder what that was all about, but that I haven't been able to uncover. The Apollo is billed as a place where stars are born and legends are made, and this couldn't be more true. Careers launched include Ella Fitzgerald, the Edwards sisters, Luther Vandross. However, he was not without his controversy. He appeared 5 times and was booed off the stage every time.
You know what? Tom Brady got picked in the 6th round, okay? You never give up.
Actually, and I heard something about Michael Jordan was told by, I think, his junior high school basketball coach that he would never make it as a professional.
Go try out for the track team, Michael.
Yeah, and Michael, and on a non-sports note, Walt Disney was told that he had no talent. No. So, so for all these things, Frederick Smith, who started FedEx as an MBA project, he got a D on that project.
Don't forget Colonel Sanders. I think
in his 60s or 70s.
The first KFC didn't open until he was in his 60s.
Yeah, 60s. Okay, I was right. Yeah. So yeah, just because the crowd boos you at the Apollo does not necessarily mean that you still can't succeed in spite of it. Jimi Hendrix won first place prize in an amateur musician contest at the Apollo in 1964. Wow. Yeah. Well, I guess he deserved it and then some. Yeah. The Jackson 5 were also winners of a contest at the Apollo, which started their professional career. And other performers that launched their career there include Sinbad, Steve Harvey, Monique, and Lauryn Hill. Just remember, pay your taxes. Lauren, pay your taxes.
Is she in trouble?
She was. She did go to jail for not paying her taxes. So yeah, just a reminder, if you happen to catch this podcast, we enjoy your singing and we want to keep you out of trouble. So, listed the performers of the Apollo. It's just too long, but just a few famous names: Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Buddy Rich, Buddy Holly, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Otis Redding, Billie Holiday, Sammy Davis Jr., James Brown, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Parliament Funkadelic, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Dionne Warwick, Patti LaBelle, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Fat Joe, Mary J. Blige, Benny King, B.B. King, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Michael Jackson without his brothers, Bruno Mars, Guns N' Roses as well. Apologies to all the amazing musicians that I didn't capture. So, I think that is also a spectacular opportunity if you're exploring Central Harlem. And finally, the last on our list, but, still great, and I don't want to downplay it, but obviously the Apollo always kind of steals the show. But there's the Malcolm Shabazz Harlem Market. It's on 116th Street. There's a whole bunch of condos and right in that vicinity, right next door almost. It's a vibrant indoor-outdoor collection of stalls with vendors selling clothing, arts and crafts, artwork, jewelry, and African masks. The vendors themselves are typically from around Africa. The market was named after the grandson of Malcolm X, Malcolm Shabazz. It's located on 116th, just east of Lenox Avenue, open daily from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, that's I've now given you 5 interesting ideas if you decide to go up to Central Harlem and explore for the day. Well, that's all I got for this episode of Harlem Stories. And just to note that we're doing this on a bi-weekly basis, but we hope you tune in regularly. Thank you very much for joining, and we hope to hear your feedback from you.
Thanks, folks.